Welcome to the Room of Lives. This concluding part of my conversation with Jackie is about beauty and love. Is beauty a trap, both for those who are beautiful as well as those who are pursuing it? Is there a beauty that does not create misery and judgment? Is love only a chemical cocktail? If so, would it be ethical to manufacture a love drug and give it to everyone? If you enjoy visiting the Room of Lives, consider supporting me by donating dye or ether to abranil.eth. That's ABHRANIL.ETH. So why do you think beauty is a trap?
I think beauty is a trap it's almost like a two-way street, right? So beauty is a trap not only to those people who are staring at the beauty themselves, but also to those people who are being considered as beautiful. Yeah, and I think it might be easier to explain why it feel like beauty is a trap for those people who are beautiful, just to start with. Because I think beauty standards a lot of times are distractions, especially to someone who often receive compliments from other people. For example, I think, and it might sound a little bit cynical, but I do think, the easiest way of not letting a pretty girl to concentrate or continuously learn or focus on what she's interested in is just to throw unrealistic beauty standard at this girl all the time. Yeah. Because maintaining beauty is something that requires a large amount of time, money, effort, and mind space. And if you focus or, decide to spend a lot of your time, your effort into maintaining your physical appearance or maintaining beauty, then it's almost very natural that you don't have much space left for other stuff. Yeah. And I think the reason why I said that beauty is also a trap for people that are staring at beauty is because it's so overwhelming at first sight that people often overlook other things. Like, for example, if you see a super pretty girl, then the first thought you would have, obviously, it's going to be, oh my gosh, she's so pretty, I can't even look at her. And then your mind is so preoccupied by this thought, you don't really think about, what kind of person she is, or you don't even have maybe you would, but like the thought of trying to know her better as a person, instead of as a female, would be less, I think. Yeah, like your interest towards her beauty would be dominant. Yeah. Then you wouldn't have as much interest in knowing what's lying under that beauty. Yeah.
So the interesting thing for me was that both of the issues that you mentioned about why beauty is a trap for the beautiful as well as the person who's seeking beauty, both of those reasons had to do with the occupancy of mental attention. Like, yes. What is, if beauty is taking up attention, then it is at the cost of other things.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, the assumption here is that our mind space is limited and you could only focus on a number of things, and it's not like a Google Drive that could expand infinitely. which I don't know necessarily if it's a true statement, whether there's going to be depletion of mind. Just from my own observation of myself, I think that's true, but I wouldn't know if that's going to be true for other people. But yeah, I do think it's oftentimes a trade-off. You have to know how to allocate your limited time and energy and attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever personally felt distracted in this way?
A lot of times.
Okay.
A lot of times. And I think it's probably also something to do with gender, and how society have different expectations based on your gender. Well, again, it's also culturally based, because in different cultures, the expected roles of each gender might be phrased differently. But I guess from my background, oftentimes women are expected to, have a better physical appearance or pay attention to the physical appearance much more than men are required to. Yeah, because I think people almost think that it's part of females' responsibilities to look pretty, and I hate saying that way, but it almost feel like
it kind of is.
Yeah, it almost feel like that's the way it is. Yeah, and I think it's pretty unfair. It is pretty unfair.
So that's kind of funny, because this phenomenon that you're talking about of like beauty in women and this whole thing, in some ways it also makes I'm a guy.
Yeah.
It makes me feel unfair. Like, it makes me feel in some ways that it's unfair. And for different reasons than yours. But I wanted to get to this point that I think the downsides of beauty exceed just the fact that it's like taking up attention. I think there's something else that is kind of, I want to say it's kind of like problematic.
I think I know what you mean.
Yeah. So so I was thinking about this while we were taking a nap outside. I was like smoking my joint and thinking about this. By the way, it's completely fine. It's my podcast. I smoke joints. Go fuck yourself. All right. So I was thinking about this beauty thing, and ostensibly, which is to say, like, apparently on the surface, the common notion is that beauty is a good thing, that it is like is this beautiful thing and you want it in your life, so it is like intrinsically good. However, if I go into myself and notice what it feels like to see something beautiful or to see someone beautiful, is that immediately there is this urge to want to consume or have that in some way. So like
kind of a willing of possession.
Yeah.
So you're like objectifying.
Yeah.
Beauty.
Like I want to consume that beauty in some way.
Right.
So, like if it's a beautiful woman, the end goal is like, okay, I want to have sex with this person. That may be one way, but that may not be completely. Like I also want to be with this person, have this person near me, and so it's all of these ways of trying to get this thing, and there's something selfish about that. And I feel like a truer kind of beauty is not a selfish beauty, where it's something that you want to get at. It's hard for me to describe it really, but I think a truer form of beauty is a kind of giving beauty.
So you think it's hard for you to just kind of stand in distance and appreciate beauty yourself, but much more like when you see something that's very beautiful, you just want to grab it and take it, or...
Yeah, in some cases. So there are different kinds of beauty. When I see beauty in nature, I don't want to try to grab it and take it. Mm-hmm. Also, there are things that people would consider, well, no, that's kind of, that doesn't matter. That's like going too far afield. But I have noticed that, for example, with the sexual attraction towards women, some would say that, okay, so this is what makes a woman more beautiful, is how physically am I attracted to her. Mm-hmm. But I noticed that that energy actually brings with it a kind of misery. Like, I notice that beauty, and somehow it's not sufficient for me to just stand there and watch this person. The attainment of happiness does not happen there. It's just this kind of need now to go and do something about it. I don't think everyone feels the way that I do, because I've talked to other people, and I've definitely talked to guys who say that they're content to just sit and observe a beautiful person.
Yeah.
But I find that that is not the case with me. There is a voice that immediately says, like, I need to do something about this. I need to, like, go and approach her and, like, talk to her, whatever. And then there's, like, this other voice that comes up from, like, my spiritual practices that's like, there's no point, you shouldn't be doing this, just, like, be happy here yourself, you're making yourself miserable, blah 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 blah. And then, like, this back and forth will keep happening, and I will become kind of miserably tangled up in my thoughts. So I've gone to, for example, electronic dance music shows where I'm completely happy dancing to the music alone, and then I notice some hot girls there. And 5 minutes later, I'm just miserably debating in my head about my life goals and principles and things like that. And I'm like, fuck this shit, I'm out of here. And, like, I left and came back home because of the great, like, tumult that it created in my head.
Wow.
And so I was like, this definitely did no good for me, this beauty. And anyway, by the way, the one thing that I must say is that all of these rationalizations can be viewed as the justifications of an intelligent person who just can't get laid. So he's like making excuses for himself. That could also be a big bias in whatever I'm saying. I was like smoking a joint outside and thinking it's also maybe a big coincidence that I haven't gotten laid in a long time. And am I just constructing this elegant...
It's like an imbalance of chemicals in your body or something.
Yeah, and I just construct this big, beautiful cathedrals of philosophical support for whatever I'm just like, all right, anyway, I'm not sure.
No, I think the biggest problem I see with beauty is it almost would never be democratic, I think. Even though people are always saying, you should have a diverse view of beauty, or we should have diverse standard of beauty, and beauty could be in all different kind of forms. I still think for something that's truly beautiful, it would be something that just surprise you or astonish you immediately, and you would know that this thing is beautiful without even saying. And that means if a thing is beautiful to that extent, then a lot of other things would be categorized as ugly. Right. So beautiful things are always just the rare categories, and the rest of the categories would just be categorized as ugly or mediocre or bland or whatever you call it. So with the concept of beauty, there comes comparison. And it almost would never end as long as you still consider, oh, this is, beautiful for me to appreciate or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have really hit upon a very crucial point.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
So...
if there's no comparison, then there's no beauty at all.
Yeah, right. So I think this is connected to what I was talking about, in the sense that when I mentioned that, like, beauty makes me miserable because it makes me want to go and attain it.
Yeah.
It also points to this quality of beauty and whatever is the negative of beauty being two sides of the same coin. Like, because beauty is this, like, great thing that you want to attain, you immediately define for yourself what misery is. And misery is like the non-attainment of beauty. So when I see a girl and she seems beautiful, immediately my thought is, I am without it. And it's like a feeling of misery. So one of my friends who does a lot of meditation was telling me that at some point he had gained enough clarity of mind to really see the succession of his thoughts in real time when he saw a beautiful woman. And he said that in fact that feeling that arose, or the thought that arose, was a negative feeling, a miserable feeling. So it was creating misery,
but it happens so fast that you're confused about it, and it ends up being this feeling, also because of cultural conditioning, of something good that you want to go towards. But in Buddhism, they always say not to engage in this dynamics of attraction and craving and aversion. So what is craving is the opposite side of aversion. The moment you create craving for one thing above others, you have also created aversion. They're not two separate things. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like setting a temperature gradient and watching the heat flow.
Yeah.
So the craving is maybe the cool. I'm just gonna give a physics analogy here. All right. So imagine that you have a long metallic rod, and it's conducting heat from one side to the other. On the one side, it's in an oven, and it's really hot in the oven. On the other side, it's in a bath of ice water. Okay. So the end product of both of these things is that it forces heat to flow from one direction to the other. In other words, both the ice water and the oven are motivations for the same movement, which is the heat flowing. In this case, and it doesn't so much matter how chill the ice water is versus how hot the oven is, only the relative thing matters. So you can always make the oven hotter in order to have the same effect, and you can make the ice water colder. So when we look at beauty, or the urge to go towards beauty as this kind of flow, it is driven by both motivations. One is the motivation of what you want to attain. In the case of the rod, the molecules want to attain a lower temperature. In the case of beauty, what you want to attain is this attraction. But simultaneously, you want to get away from the opposite of beauty. And it's really the same thing as going towards beauty. There's no difference between them.
Yeah.
So if there is no difference between those two, then there is no way to create beauty and not to create aversion or ugliness.
Exactly.
So the sum total of that game is kind of negative.
Yeah.
I feel like it.
It's almost like for a group of people to feel beautiful about themselves, you have to make the other group of people feel miserable and ugly about themselves.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, even though the group of people who are feeling beautiful about themselves still are not having all positive feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it might sound a little bit, not so political correct, but
yeah,
that's how I feel about it. That there's almost no way of demonetizing beauty as a concept.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to make this unfounded claim that, not a claim, but I have this feeling that it's possible to discover a kind of this kind of beauty that you described is a beauty that stands only in contrast to ugliness. And if there's no ugliness, there won't be any beauty.
Yeah.
But I think it's possible to find beauty that does not make anything ugly in contrast.
For example?
Okay, actually, I kind of hesitate to talk about this because I don't think I'm mature enough yet to talk about it. But I think when you feel love, everything becomes beautiful. And it's not at the cost of anything else. And the lack of love makes this true beauty into this kind of comparative beauty / ugly thing. In love, everything becomes beautiful.
Yeah, I think that would only exist, the scenario set in which there's a true form of beauty that doesn't make anything else feel ugly, is only when you have equal amount of love for everything.
Yeah.
Then that's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I think in that light, in that perspective of looking at the world with love, everything appears beautiful.
Yeah.
I have simulated or faked this feeling on mushrooms, but it makes me suspect that it is possible to feel that way in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some reason to believing that it is possible to feel that way.
I kind of understand the love you were talking about. You know, it sounds like it's a love for the whole humankind, or for the whole world, for everything that's out there. Yeah.
For life.
For life.
Yeah.
And I've thought about that as well, but I think for me it's very easy to feel that kind of grand big love for the whole species of human being, or for the whole world. But when it comes to specific love to individuals, that's when it gets hard.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're talking about this kind of love for the whole world, it could be much more abstract, and you could easily love someone who you haven't had direct interactions with. But when you talk about love for someone, maybe were mean to you, or were bad to you, or had done some harm to you, then the love to that person, or for that person specifically, is much harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, in a sense, I feel like I don't have the right to beautiful things until I start
to love ugly things? Is that what you're trying to say?
until I start to see beauty in things that earlier I did not consider beautiful. I feel like beauty is this intersubjective thing, which is not, I mean, it's not objective that you can like look at it and point at it and say that's beautiful. Because the same thing can be beautiful to a person and not beautiful to another person. So we don't have this objective thing like, I don't know, 1 kilogram of rice. That's just sitting there. And everyone will point at it and say, okay, that's 1 kilogram of rice.
Yeah.
And you can give it to a person and it will be 1 kilogram of rice.
Right.
But with beauty, is this very kind of subjective thing where some people see beauty in a thing, other people don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, I feel like beauty is this very personal thing which you are not so much observing or perceiving, but creating at the same time that you're perceiving it. So it's like an internal creation. And so I think there's like this big feedback loop that's connecting the creation of beauty and the appreciation of beauty.
Specify on that.
Yeah, it's like hard to. Okay, so it kind of in general goes to the question of what is this world? You know, is there an objective world out there, or are we creating the world as we perceive it? In the sense that you take this view that we are creating the world as we perceive it, we are also creating beauty as we perceive it. The question of whether beauty comes from the external world and hits us, or we create beauty and send it out to the external world, is, I don't think you can really resolve it. It just seems that when you cast your eyes on certain things, this sense of beauty arises. And
I see. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying it's you staring at the object makes the object beautiful. Beauty is not some intrinsic attribute this object has to itself.
I'm saying you cannot tell which is which. I mean, where is beauty coming from? Was it objectively in the object, and then, of course, I was attracted to it? Or am I
simply because of your attraction then?
Yeah, that I just like arbitrarily, because of some arbitrary coding in my head, I get fixated with this random arbitrary thing in nature. Maybe like what is a reproductive plant part, like a flower. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And everyone comes and says, yeah, that's really cool because they're wired like me. They have the same brain. They all arbitrarily like the same thing. And so we all get together and decide flowers are beautiful. And then many generations later, children grow up in the society being told that flowers are beautiful, and they get all confused like, are flowers beautiful because people are telling us, or do we make them beautiful? You know, but in the very beginning, it's just this thing that we looked at and a sense of beauty arose. And I'm just saying that let's go back to the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are that we don't know whether we create beauty or the world gives us beauty. All we know is that there is a sense of beauty arising.
I mean, I guess you can explain that biologically or from a natural selection point, you know, like especially when we were talking about beauty from beauty standards that we perceived from the opposite sex. Like, for example, like maybe sometimes we see girls with big boobs or like big ass and we think it's beautiful. Then of course from a natural selection standpoint you can argue that it's because girls with big boobs or big asses are better or have a better chance of giving birth to healthier kids or have a better reproducing ability, I guess.
I don't know if that's true, by the way.
I don't know if that's true, but that's just something I read about, like, natural selection and how natural selection argues for our definitions of beauty standards.
Yeah. But I'm not sure if that's backwards logic or forwards logic. Like, someone said, oh, we have to explain why people like big boobs and big asses. And so according to the theory of natural selection, this is the only consistent answer.
Yeah.
That it must be that women with big boobs and asses give birth to healthy babies.
Yeah.
But that might be backwards logic starting from the axioms of natural selection. May not be like forward proved in the first place.
Or just like, having a symmetrical face are oftentimes perceived to be more attractive. But why is that?
Yeah.
I think there is something biological about, having a symmetrical face. Maybe it means your gene pool are like more clean than other people or something like that. But it's hard to articulate what exactly it is biologically that makes us, attracted to people who are more symmetrical than others. Yeah.
So what about love? Like, do you believe in love?
So are we finished talking about beauty, or is it just something you want to talk about?
I wanted to club this together with the love.
Oh, okay. Love is great. I think love is great.
You think love is great?
I think love is great. Yeah. I think it's really hard to give love a description or like a summary of me telling what exactly is love for me. I think it's one of those nonverbal things. I think it's one of those things that you could only feel, and it would be very hard to describe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But your question was, is love just a mixture of certain chemicals?
Chemicals, yeah.
Yeah. And if so, can we recreate love by recreating that chemical mixture?
Right.
What do you think? Do you think that love is a mixture of chemicals?
I think it could be. And I wonder if you have like the right ratio of dopamines and serotonins and adrenalines, maybe, then you would be able to recreate exactly the sensation that you would feel when you're in love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so your question was, would it be unethical to do that?
Right. Do you think it would be unethical to do that? Like, okay, so let's say if I create a love drug today, and by the way, I have no plans of creating a love drug. FBI, if you're hearing this, please don't deport me or anything. Yeah, but if you're creating a love drug in which you just kind of like have the perfect mix of whatever chemical substance that's out there, and every time after you consume this love drug, you're like madly in love and it feels so great. It feels like heaven. But the only thing is, you have to rely on this drug to be able to feel love. Do you think that's ethical?
Well, the logical thing for me to say would be that there's nothing unethical about it.
Yeah.
Because if the concern is about love, which the concern of ethics is about, love and kindness and like being nice to everyone, etc.
Yeah.
So if the whole point of ethics is love, then if a drug delivers it directly, then it should be the most ethical thing. Just direct delivery of love. Mm-hmm. This is the thing that ethics has been trying to safeguard, is how most human beings should be given the most kindness, fairness, justice, which are just like words for love, in my opinion. So then this drug is like the most ethical thing, and you should make sure that like people get it. So that is the kind of shallow treatment of that situation. A little bit more deeply, it seems that I'm hesitant to say that this drug should just be given to everyone, because it feels from inside me that there should be some measure of struggle in attaining love, if it is true love.
I was gonna say that, yes.
Yeah, I don't know where this sense comes from.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe from a sense of fairness, like I feel like any love that I have attained in life has sometimes been after struggle.
Exactly.
And it feels better at that time.
Yes.
If it has been at the end of struggle.
Yes, I was gonna say, I think personal opinion, you wouldn't be able to know what true love is before you experience true struggling.
Yeah.
But then I know it sounds very contradictory to the statement I just made, that love could be just a pure mix of chemicals.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but...
Well, you know, I mean, someone else could come and say that this is a kind of... is it like a schadenfreude? Well, anyway, what it is that they'll come and say, hey, you had to struggle and suffer in order to get love. But this next generation of humans has access to this drug where they don't have to struggle. And the reason that you want to come in the way of this drug is because you want other humans to suffer as you have, which is the opposite of love. So, I don't know. I can't make up my mind.
I think the reason why I think it wouldn't be as ethical is because imagine one day if everybody in the society is taking this love drug and they're feeling euphoria every day from the effect that this drug is giving them, then love wouldn't be love anymore, because love wouldn't be love without suffering.
Yeah, but maybe it is possible to feel that same love without suffering. And it's just a coincidence that we have also felt suffering.
But then love would be a very daily thing. It wouldn't give you as much of the euphoria you're feeling.
That is in this world, but you're talking about, imagine a drug whose effects take constant...
I know, but like you're constantly in this euphoria, that euphoria just becomes life for you. Yeah. And love isn't anything special anymore, because you're experiencing it every second.
That would happen to a normal mind.
Yeah.
But what if this drug also makes your mind says that you never feel fatigued of this love? That those thoughts never arise. You never feel...
I'm not saying you would feel fatigue. I'm saying when you don't have a comparison that you could compare the feeling of love to, then the feeling of love just becomes baseline.
Yeah, but maybe they still keep feeling happiness throughout.
Of course they would know. I mean, of course they would feel happy throughout, but how would they know that it's happiness?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Because it's just baseline for them.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just everyday life for them.
Yeah, I can imagine a person just being held in this state of bliss for infinite time.
I think eventually then it would become just a very peaceful kind of...
We don't know what will happen. We were just talking about this completely hypothetical situation.
It's all in our like imagination whatsoever.
It would just like come to baseline.
Yeah, it would just becomes the mean.
Yeah.
The expected value.
So was that going to be your thought as well on the question of whether that love drug is ethical?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say when it becomes very available. Yeah. Love is precious in a sense because it's scarce. When it becomes readily available and when it becomes your daily life, then I don't know how much excitement and euphoria you would feel towards love anymore. Mm-hmm. Because you pretty much get used to this thing.
Yeah. But when it came to beauty, you kind of argued in the opposite direction.
What do you mean?
That beauty is the rare thing. And so by virtue of it being rare, it categorizes a bunch of other things as ugly.
Yeah.
So in that same way, love in being this kind of rare thing that you have to get up to struggle and stuff, by virtue of being rare, casts so many things into being non-love. So isn't there something kind of also implicitly evil about the idea of love, in the same way that there was something kind of problematic about the idea of beauty? It was creating more misery. And isn't that what love is also creating? By being 10% of our experience, it's making the 90% just...
I think it's
not love.
different because love is an experience, but beauty is something much more like a judgment you make.
I'm not sure about that distinction. That's what I was talking about when I said, I don't know if we are creating it or it already exists or what. All I know is that there's a sense called beauty that arises when I perceive something, which is similarly to how I feel about love. I don't know if I'm giving love to this homeless person or they gave me a sensation of love which is making me help them or whatever. But a sense of love arises in that happening.
Right, but...
So
love,
in that sense, I don't know how love and beauty are different.
Well, love is an emotion, right?
Mm.
But beauty is much more like an attribute. It's like a label we put on.
Yeah, but it might be a semantic problem. That it's the same thing, but we'll just interpret it in multiple different ways. I don't know. Yeah.
The difference is, I don't think there is anything... Being used to love or having love as baseline, it wouldn't be evil or it wouldn't be super bad or something like that. It would just make love lose its preciousness right now. But I'm not saying if you're experiencing love on a daily basis, it's going to be toxic to you.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's the case. I'm just arguing when it becomes something that people get used to.
Yeah.
Then
it stops being
that precious thing anymore. Yeah.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Whereas when we talk about beauty, being categorized as ugly hurts. So that's the difference.
Yeah, but also being disconnected from love hurts.
You think
and being
so?
categorized as ugly is the same thing as being disconnected from love.
Do you think everybody should be loved? Do you think it's bad to feel like unloved or...
Yeah. You know, when I'm on the receiving end for being unloved, then it becomes clear that I shouldn't be doing this to other people.
Yeah.
Like, I can imagine just being born into the world physically ugly or whatever, and through no fault of your own, people don't love you. And that feels like a bad thing to have to happen to you. But we deal it out on a daily basis to other people who are ugly. So, in the interest of the golden rule, golden rule is do unto other people as I would they should do unto me. Meaning, do to other people what you would want them to do to you.
Yeah.
In the principle, according to that golden rule principle, you ought to love everyone. In order to claim love from everyone, which is what we ultimately want. So, yeah. But there is something in me that prevents me from loving everything equally.
What do you think is that?
I don't know. It's the what do you call it? The original sin of man. They ate the apple. Before that, everything was fine. And then God was like, all right, I'm going to send you guys on an adventure. I'm going to kick you out from my love for some time. And then you struggle. And then maybe you'll get it back. This story of kind of separation from the one source and love, and then the struggle, and then reattainment, and this cycle, this has been told in many different cultures and religions. So it might just be some pointing to some underlying vein of truth about what this universe is really about that keeps popping up in these different cultures.
And what do you mean by the underlying truth?
So I was hoping to get to that with the podcast that I wanted to do about my spiritual evolution. At the end, I wanted to kind of summarize what is roughly my viewpoint now, as opposed to when I used to be more of a militant atheist. And so this question comes very close to that question of what is my belief of the nature of reality? And you asked me, what is this vein of truth? And I'm not entirely sure. But this is not a material world, and consciousness does not arise from the material world. And like all of us are connected. All of this is one thing manifesting as many different things. And I'm not actually going to die, because in some way I am life. I am life. And also it's all about love. I don't know exactly what that means, but the only reason anything is happening at all, there are all these fake reasons that humans make up, like purpose of life, we've got to do this, earn a lot of money, and they ultimately vanish because they see that those purposes are fake. There is really no purpose. And the fact that all of these things are happening without purpose is because love. Love has no purpose. Love is just there. And that is the word that we can use for things that happen without purpose. And I think therefore everything is love.
But it sounds to me like love is just like this name or this group of things that you haven't figured out whether there's a purpose or not, so you just attribute all the things into this group of love, you know?
No. There are things that if there is a thing for which I don't know whether there is a purpose or not, I wouldn't immediately classify it as like being love. I don't really know. I mean, all of this discussion that is happening right now about the purpose of things or not purposes of things, these are just like intellectual debates. Ultimately, nothing has a purpose.
I agree.
So it's less important whether I have figured out the purpose of something or not. You know, I mean, human beings are self-contradictory, like I'm self-contradictory. As they say, like I contain multitudes. So even as I'm having this conversation with you and telling you nothing has purpose, 3 days later, I will be worried about the purpose of something, because we can't manage to keep the same perspective all the time.
Yeah.
So sometimes I worry about things and their purpose, but ultimately nothing has any purpose. But the fact that things are still happening without purpose is another name for what I would call love. And this is not the same thing as what people understand when they say love. There's all kinds of ideas. There could be just like the real purpose-driven, like carnal pleasure of like wanting to have sex with someone, whatever. So the word love is kind of complicated to use.
Thank you for joining Jackie and me for this conversation. I hope you enjoyed hanging out with us and that you will visit again. Take care until next time.